once we're first starting to work with a client, what we're first looking for is just how quickly we can start seeing rankings.
I'm showing a graph of 20 something blue dots, a bunch of clients we had back in the day when we did this analysis. It is a scatter plot. Where the blue dot is on the x-axis is months engaged with us, and the grid marks are 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 months. There's actually clients that are beyond that, but I zoomed in so that the graph was readable. And then on the y-axis where the blue dot is, the y-axis goes 25, 50, 75, 100, and 125, and that's the number of blog posts we have ranking on the first page. The best result, the ultimate result from your content marketing, heck, it should be any marketing, is leads. And so you can get those even when you're not ranking. Today we want to talk about how long it takes to get content marketing results. This is something that a lot of clients ask us, and Benji and I were talking, and Benji, you said, hey, we should do an entire episode on this, and there's actually a lot to talk about there. Help set the stage for the listeners of like, what made you think about this, and what do you think are the important parts that we should sort of guide our discussion today?
Yeah, so typically either during the sales process or when we first start working with a client, one of the top questions that we get asked is just, well, how long is it going to take for us to start seeing results? And there's a lot of nuance to answering that question because we have to define, okay, what are the results? Like, what are you actually looking for? And I think most people are thinking until they start seeing leads or conversions come from content, but we can talk through maybe what are the precursors to the leads. So what are the things that we start to measure and start to report on before we're able to start driving leads for the company? So I think that's one thing that we should talk through. And then the other kind of nuances, it really depends on the type of business in terms of like how many leads that we're going to be able to drive. It also just depends on their business. Like if they're only generating, let's say 100 or 1,000 leads a month right now, content's only going to make up a portion of that, and it's going to be a slow build. And so I think we should also talk through that as well. And so, yeah, I think in this episode, we just want to talk through some of our actual real client data, talk through all the different metrics that we're measuring and when each becomes important throughout the life cycle of an engagement. And yeah.
Yeah, what we can do is talk through what metrics you will start to see in order and what leads to what. And specifically, just to get to it, what we see is rankings. Like kind of what we're looking for from beginning to end is rankings first. Traffic, although that's almost automatic, you can kind of disagree. Like if you're getting rankings and the keyword has volume, then you get traffic, and then eventually conversions. And obviously the rankings, what's nice about rankings is it's not like yes or no. You can start to see it move up. You're like, oh, I'm in position 20s, I'm in the teens, and now I'm in 8, 5, 2, or whatever. And as many people in SEO know, but if you don't, the traffic you get from those rankings is not linear, it's like exponential. You get a heck of a lot more when you're in the top few spots versus even when you're down at 8. But before we get into that, one thing you said that I want to do a little bit of a sidebar on is you said that what we should kind of focus on is what does it mean until I see results? And you said, I think most people mean leads. And what I want to add to that is that's because there are clients.
That's true.
And we have been projecting into the world for 7 years or whatever, this lead-based content strategy, SEO focus. Like we have been saying, hey, you should be focused on leads as your driving metric for content and SEO. So of course, the clients who self-select and fill out our form to work with us and talk to us and then do work with us are lead focused. But the vast majority of people aren't. When they say get results from content and SEO, I think for most people, they do what we I don't know, to kind of put it bluntly, call vanity metrics, which is like traffic and maybe rankings. And then as I'm saying this out loud, heck, like some of our clients say that. And they're smart enough to be like, you guys, obviously we hired you for the leads. We get it. We're bought in. We want the bottom of funnel. But my executive team still wants to see traffic grow up or go up, or I am in charge of organic and the blog. And one of the things that I'm responsible for is the traffic thing. So can we do it? So like, just keep in mind, I mean, these videos are sort of more generally useful to anyone who's listening that's like, either in the marketing space, obviously, or, kind of founder types or whatever. That's a metric that's up to you. Obviously, if you've read anything we've written or even said in this show, we think you should be gauging success on leads or conversions. Let's just make that concrete. What do we mean? For SaaS companies, that's either free trial for trial-based SaaS or demo request. For service companies like us or any others, it could be a direct sales, talk to sales like form fill. For e-commerce companies, it would actually be a sale, like a transaction. So that's what we mean, like product leads, not they read our content and they entered their email to read more content or download an ebook or something like that. We think it should be that because we have seen time and again, and maybe we'll do another deep dive episode like this on the basics of our framework and why we believe this and the data behind it. That we believe I shouldn't say that. It's like I'm talking about the tooth fairy. We see with hard data day in and day out that traffic does not automatically equal customers and leads. That you can get high traffic sites and get a bunch of keywords that have a bunch of traffic and you're not getting any conversions from it. We deal with that daily. Long soapbox, but I thought it was kind of important.
That was a long soapbox. Okay, I think let's go into expectations next, because I think that's the next thing that someone thinks about is just, okay, so if we start doing content or SEO, or if we start working with you, what should we kind of expect in terms of when we should start seeing rankings, when those should start getting to page one or in those top 3 positions, when we're going to start really seeing traffic increase, and when those conversions are really going to start to come through. So the way that we think about it is in that order. And so once we're first starting to work with a client, what we're first looking for is just how quickly we can start seeing rankings. And I would say on average from what we see, we're typically, if the site has been around for a while, we're typically starting to see rankings on the first page within the first 1 to 3 months. Sometimes it can be really quickly. So sometimes right after we publish a piece, already ranking on page 1. And then sometimes it can take a lot longer. Sometimes we publish a piece, the first piece, and it's ranking in position 20 or 30. Or sometimes it doesn't even show up in Rank Tracker, which kind of typically means there's some issue with the site. But I would say on average, we do see rankings show up on that first page in those first 3 months. And that's typically what we would want to see. If they don't show up then there, as we kind of touched on in the last video on content strategy, we might shift some of the ideas that we've gone after that are a little bit easier from a difficulty perspective. For example, focusing a little bit more on jobs to be done keywords as opposed to really competitive category keywords, if that's something that we ended up going after as one of our first pieces.
Hold up. So you saying 1 to 3 months, the
data doesn't show that. Well,
yeah.
Because you can scroll down and I can explain why.
So for the folks listening, so we're now sharing a screen. I'll explain it as best as possible, as always in our episodes. How long, this is a blog post we have written. You can Google how long does it take to rank on the first page of Google. We should be number 1. If we're not, you can make fun of me in the comments.
I don't know if we're number 1 for that right now, but we'll see.
Oh my God. Okay, now
I hope people make fun of you.
To check. Aye! What is this, AI stuff?
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, you can definitely make fun of me. What? I swear we were number 1 for this.
I know.
This thing's ranking for something.
We must have just got bumped off. But again, as in a few episodes ago, we said we were
Rankings
on page
fluctuate?
1. Yeah, we were on page 1 for content marketing agencies. Then we got bumped off If you look today, I think we're on first page. We should be number one for B2B content marketing agencies. So again, rankings fluctuate. That's an important thing for,
Yeah, I
for
mean,
everyone to
like
know.
you should be listening to a podcast and or working with an agency that's confident enough to just put this out there. Like we don't care. We're not self-conscious about our rankings. This thing was ranking for stuff. It happens to not be, and we're happy to kind of joke around about it and make fun of ourselves. Okay, let me explain this to get back on track. I'm showing a graph of I don't know, 20 something blue dots, a bunch of clients we had back in the day when we did this analysis. It is a scatter plot. On the x-axis is where the blue dot is on the x-axis is months engaged with us. And the grid marks are 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 months. There's actually clients that are beyond that, but I zoomed in so that the graph was readable. And then on the y-axis where the blue dot is, the y-axis goes 25, 50, 75, 100, and 125. And that's the number of blog posts we have ranking on the first page. And the shape of the graph is this kind of, I would call it exponentially. There's like an initial exponential part at the bottom and then maybe more linear. There's a spread in the data. In other words, it is going up and to the right, which is what you would expect, obviously. The more months you are engaged with Grow and Convert, which is the right side of the graph, the higher your blue dot is on the vertical axis, meaning you have more posts ranking on first page. The reason I brought it up now and was objecting to what Benji said is he said 1 to 3 months. I agree with you anecdotally. Obviously, I'm seeing the same client data that you're seeing. In this particular study, this was done at one point in time with our clients at that moment. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish blue dots within the first 5 months. That means at that exact moment, those 5 clients that we happen to have in months 1 through 5 of their engagement with us did not have blog posts on the first page, but I agree with Benji.
Are those dots actually zero? Because my argument would be the 0 to 25. There's a large spread there, and so those could just be minimal. It could be
No,
like
I
one
think
or
4
two.
out of 5 are 0, but like the point is like you and I have both seen this, and we're going to talk about an example client now. It does happen, especially if you have a client with great topical authority. The domain is like older; they've been around for a while. They have good domain authority in addition to topical authority, and we publish a blog post. We've seen in month 1 like this it rank, but also for some clients that are on the opposite end, it can take a while. That's sort of natural SEO stuff. But yeah, so I would maybe asterisk your numbers to like
Okay.
1 to
One, one,
5
1 to
months,
5.
1 to 6, maybe. If it was like we weren't seeing anything on page 1 6 months in, everybody is kind of freaking out.
For sure. That's 100% true. And I think sometimes people see this graph and they're like, so we shouldn't expect anything for 5 months. I would say that's rare. Again, I think if we don't see anything for 5 months, you're not seeing rankings. Right? There's something wrong.
I'll explain this in more detail later, but let me scroll all the way down to a graph that I was planning on showing later on, which is leads per month. So it's the same graph, but the y-axis is not number of first page rankings, is leads. And there you see those same 4 or 5 data points. You see a little bump in the first 5 months where they were normally on 0. You see someone in 2 months have like 10 plus leads a month. So again, what do you mean by get results? We think the best result, the ultimate result from your content marketing, heck, it should be any marketing, is leads. And so you can get those even when you're not ranking. You can get traffic early. I just wanted to add this.
Yeah, and I think to speak a little bit more on this, how are we able to get leads without getting a ton of first page rankings or top 1 through 3 rankings in those first few months? Sometimes we do those disruption stories. I know we just did a whole episode on this recently, and those are promoted through paid social, and those can drive initial traction while we're waiting for leads to pick up. There's also other things that we can do early on. Like, for example, if there was a keyword that we wanted to go after that the company already had a blog post on, we might choose to update one of those in those first few months, and the improvement of the rankings can happen much faster through updates versus producing new content. So that's why I said there's we needed to go into this in depth because there's a lot of nuance to kind of answering this question, depending on the type of business, how much content you've produced, if your site's new versus old, what type of business you are. So we kind of just want to explain all of that on this episode.
Okay. So if we scroll back up, rankings. You were before I had a bunch of asides and took you off track. Number one thing we look for at the beginning is rankings, and you're working your way onto page one. The other important thing to say here in terms of expectation setting is, well, actually, the transition then is step 2, traffic. Do not expect a ton of traffic until you're in the top half of page one, really the first 3 spots. You can Google like...
I'm going to bring up a case study because I feel like that'll help explain this a little bit more, but you can keep speaking while I try to find it.
Yeah, so you can Google these like graphs people have. I don't know what they call it, but like click percentage or click rate as a function of like ranking position, and that thing, as anyone would expect, follows intuition. There's like an exponential drop off. You know, like I don't know, I think it's something like the first position organically people estimate get 30% of clicks, and then like 18. And by the time you get to the bottom half of page one, you're still on page one. Which, by the way, Google now does this kind of like infinite scroll type of thing. So it's not like really a page 2, at least on certain queries, and on desktop you can scroll down. But traffic it'll take time to build. But those first few rankings and the rankings at the top are pretty important. Go ahead, Benji.
Yeah, I think this graph really does show that slow growth of traffic in the beginning. And so this is a pretty established site. So they had been doing content for a long time. I think we named them in the case study SmartLook. So they're a product that is very similar, if you're familiar, to Hotjar. They have some of the same features, but product analytics essentially. And you can kind of just see the slow growth. So for someone on the client side, you're thinking, okay, 188, 300 visitors a month, 720, 785. This period right here of this 5 months feels very slow. You're like, okay, I'm growing traffic a few hundred a month, maybe 200. And then you really start to see this curve take off. And this is very typical for all of our clients. Those first 5 to 6 months typically feel very slow. Again, what we're really focused on is how many rankings are we getting on that first page, and then moving those into the top 3 positions. And then once we've moved the rankings into those top 3 positions, that's when you really start to see this graph take off. And I can show another client. This is on the B2C side. So search volumes are much higher than for some of the B2B clients. Let me share this one. And again, you can kind of see those really small numbers. So month 1 here, month 2, 12 visitors, 56 visitors, 245, 635. Now we start to get into the thousands, and you see this number really take off here. And I think then this is like a few years into our engagement, then we're at hundreds of thousands. And so again, I just think from an expectation setting perspective, it takes a while to start generating those rankings, and then for that to translate into traffic. And then finally, you should start seeing that traffic translate into conversions. And I think once we get around that 1,000 visitors per month traffic is when you start to kind of see the conversions come in. And it's the same kind of trend on the conversion side, where the conversions feel really slow. Like there's a month where you might get 1, and then like 3, and then it might go down to 1 again, and then it jumps to 10, and then all of a sudden it starts growing from there, and you start to see consistent conversions coming in over time. And I would say the rankings and the traffic comes in that first 1 to 5 months, and then the conversions, you'll start to see the trickle also come in through those first 5 or 6 months. And then it's really that 6 to 9 months that we kind of see as the sweet spot for conversions to start to show that kind of exponential trend.
Yeah, I just, while you were looking at that, I looked at SmartLook's conversion data, but we were getting a few conversions in the first few months, even when that traffic was low. And just like I showed that conversion data for earlier, where the leads data had non-zero values in the first 5 months when the rankings didn't, there's multiple reasons for that. 1, disruption story, although I'm not sure we did that for them. But 2, the conversion rate is really important. So since we're moving from traffic to conversions, I wanted to share this study and some of these to kind of set
I think you can
expectations.
type in SEO conversions into Google and we should be number one. And I don't think you can
Oh,
return
I
wrong
just
for that.
went because I embarrassed myself earlier. I just went straight to the post, which was like in my
Try it.
bookmarks.
Maybe
Now
maybe
we're gonna
maybe
try
I'll
it.
be maybe I'll be embarrassed on this one.
SEO conversions. Yoast is number one. Oh, come
Oh,
on, Benji.
did we just fall? Oh, there we
Oh
are.
no, we went to like
Maybe
number eight.
maybe
Wow,
it's a
this is great. This whole episode is us just Googling things that we think we're ranking number one for, and we're not at all.
oh man, we just got bumped. Oh, if you type in SEO conversion rate, we're now number 2 under Moz. Man, Moz just beat us out
Hey,
somehow.
I got the featured snippet, but I am on my regular browser, not incognito. That's so funny. Whatever, we still have the best article. Again, we, we have no self consciousness in our rankings. We think they're great, and things fluctuate, so we don't mind joking around about it. Okay, what we did here, the reason I say we have the best article, this is our actual client data. I have not seen other people publish this. All due respect to Moz, I bet you, like their thing is titled "What is conversion rate optimization? How to calculate it?" Give me a break. So this is an actual data piece we looked at specifically, me and Meg Riley, the strategist that wrote this article for us, 95 articles that are attacking or going after at least 95 unique keywords across a variety of clients. I think over 6 or maybe even a dozen. In sum, those articles, we're talking about over 100,000 page views from organic only and over 4,000 conversions. And the reason why those two are important is because what this data study is doing is looking at the conversion rate of different keywords. And the bar graph I'm showing shows conversion rates anywhere like in the single digit percentages overall for these different types of keywords. Category keywords like direct category keywords versus side category keywords versus category keywords with a layer of specificity, comparison and alternative keywords versus jobs to be done. You can scroll through this article, but what I will summarize for you is when we dig into like inside each of those subcategories and get even more specific, and you see many instances of articles, aka keywords it's going after. Because for us, we go one article to attack one keyword with double digit conversion rates. I'm showing one now of this particular example that has 15% conversion rate for a particular article. That we see that routinely. I was just doing this analysis for one of our clients where we're doing updates pieces, and we see that. So that means even in those early stages where you're kind of working your way up to positions 1, 2, and 3, which is always our goal with our clients, get in the top 3 spots, a 15% conversion rate, 10% conversion rate, even if you have 100 page views in month 2, can often get a conversion. And that's great. And that's the benefit of doing bottom of the funnel content marketing. If you're doing top of the funnel content marketing and the pieces you're doing are, I don't know, what is analytics or something, and no one who's Googling that is going to be buying analytics software, then it's more, you really got to wait a long time and do all kinds of hand waving of how it's doing how it's like benefiting the business. Oh, it's getting brand awareness. But if you're actually doing bottom of the funnel content marketing, the benefit is the conversion rate is so high that even at early stages, you can start to see conversions coming in. And I will say that emotionally, that's kind of a good thing to think about expectation setting. If you have your CEO, your boss, your CMO, whatever, getting a little bit antsy and you're implementing something like this, to me, it's good to keep everyone focused on the keywords and how valuable they are and the intent, and start to show this whole thing working. And we talked about that in a recent episode as well. Like start to show examples of it working start to finish. Look, this keyword makes sense for us. Look at how great this is. We're on position 14 and we already saw a conversion from it. Just wait till we're at position 2.
Another question that people often ask is just how many conversions do you think I can drive from content? And that is a much harder question to answer before we start working with someone, because there's so many variables that play into this. There's how easy is it going to be to rank? There's like what's the conversion rate of your site overall right now? How many conversions are you driving as a business without content? And it's really, really, really tough to figure out what those numbers will be. And so typically the way that we think about it is just in those first 5, 6, 9 months, we're trying to get rankings, we're trying to get conversions, and then we're just kind of plotting the conversions. And I think once you get into it, you can kind of then see, okay, this is how much growth there is to be had over time. Like you can, based on what the keyword opportunities are, how much volume is there in the space that you're going after, what is the conversion rate of some of those blog posts, what does that trend look like, and then I feel like we can kind of give a better idea of what the growth potential is after we get into it. But I think it's really, really hard to predict. Like you can drive 200 leads from content per month before we start basically testing things, before we start generating rankings and conversions. I don't know if you have a different answer. I know for some clients we do models at the beginning, but again, I feel like the models at the end of the day are still just guesstimates. I mean, we can kind of take whatever data is available for us and make a model, but the chances of that tracking to exactly what the model says is pretty slim.
Yeah, several comments. One, let me just illustrate visually what Benji is saying for people watching. So let's contrast this. This is the graph I showed at the beginning of just this kind of like real, like easy to follow with the eye up and to the right trend of more first page rankings as a function of how long you've been engaged with Grow and Convert. Each blue dot is a client at that exact time. The reality is each of those blue dots, each client, I'm going to get a little bit mathy, so I apologize. The reality is they have their own curve. This was just a study done at one point in time. But like you can see it's like nice and tight. There's like a clear growth. Now I'm flipping to a different data point where I've had to obviously for privacy not include who the clients are. But these are the curves, not of rankings, but conversions for each client as a function of months with us. And for those of you that aren't looking at the screen on YouTube, this is just a noisy, messy graph with a bunch of curves that kind of span the gamut of, you know, slow, flat-looking curves with not as much growth, with just these steep exponential curves where at 5 months we have, 75 conversions, and at a year in we have over 100 conversions a month directly attributable to our blog posts and everything in between. So this is the visual illustration of what Benji is saying. And I don't think I'm going to say anything new that you didn't already say, but just to emphasize it, I'll say, here are all of the different factors that go into your leads per month curve from content. So you covered, well, yeah, I guess I'm just repeating you. So there's how easy is it to rank? How fast do you rank? What's the volume of those keywords? And then I guess to summarize something else you said like, what is the conversion rate of everything ranking? It's just like your conversion rate, but also what is your conversion metric? In that variety of curves I showed with different colors just now, some of those curves are self-serve, SaaS, and like what's your price point also, right? Goes into that conversion rate metric. If you're selling, $9 a month SaaS product in a category where everyone kind of like knows that product category and your customers need it, I don't know, it's like marketers being sold some analytics software, or like entrepreneurs being sold like an invoicing software to invoice your clients. Like everybody uses that software. You know you need it. You're just competing on features or whatever. So it's just like an easier conversion. Then you're going to get more. Versus what? Versus some of those flatter graphs are enterprise, long sales cycle. It's maybe a more complex product that's like creating a new space or whatever, and the customer needs to be sold the idea and the concept of even needing it. Everybody knows about those SaaS companies. They exist, or service companies. That's going to take longer, and just your raw conversions is lower. So you saw on some of those graphs flatter looking graphs, but clients working with us past 20 months. Why? Why are they still working with us? Because that's really valuable for them.
Yeah. I mean, it's like our business. I think we said on the last call that we got 9 leads last month. Okay, 9 leads on one of those graphs doesn't look that great, but when the leads when they close, they pay you 10,000 plus a month. I mean, they're great leads, and so nine is very meaningful for us. And so even some of those numbers, even though it says like 5 or 10 a month, it's that kind of deal size or even higher for some of those businesses, and those are very valuable.
And I'll give you another nuance with us. That's 9 leads, and on our work with us page, we say the price. We say 10,000 a month. Most agencies or service businesses don't do that. Why? Because they want more leads. It's another little soapbox. The marketer in charge of the website is usually also kind of being responsible for the lead gen numbers. And in a larger organization, like in us, it's like we're in charge of the website, so we're not BSing anyone, right? But in those, they're incentivized to make the lead numbers look as high as possible. So they're not going to mention the price or anything like that because they want the highest conversion rate. Whereas we know if we don't mention the price, we have to sort through a bunch of looky-loos leads that can't afford us anyways. And so we mention the price before the form, and that's going to get the number to go down, but it means the quality of the lead is higher. Meaning, even for a single business, our business, there is no absolute number of leads that's good versus bad. So you don't need to think like that. It's just relative. That's why the way Benji was answering this question at the beginning before I showed this was we test it, we look at it. When we get the first things ranking, then we start to see what is that number and you try to grow it from there. There is no absolute. And I'm actually passionate about this because I see this on the e-commerce, the CRO side. Is there are some people that have been like, well, I talked to blah, 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 and the industry average of our conversion rate in consumer electronics is 4%. Why is ours 2%? You're like, dude, these things, there is no average. I mean, yes, sure, you can create an average. You can do an average. That's a metric. But like, it's not meaningful. Your business is unique. If our work with us page changed and we didn't put the price on there and we just said, work with Grow and Convert, fill out this form, and there was barely anything in there, we might get a hell of a lot more leads. I don't want to sort through them. That could be your job.
Yeah, that's also a good point just in terms of the data too, because there's different definitions of leads. So for some of our clients, I know there's like a total lead number, but we only report on, let's say, sales qualified leads or marketing qualified leads. And so those graphs can vary because some of them are free trials. Some of them are sales qualified leads. Some of them are marketing qualified leads. Some of them are demos. And so that number will vary based on what your conversion metric is.
Yeah, I hesitate to whether we want to include this, and I'm going to say what like people on like famous podcast guests say, like you can edit this out. At least on like NBA podcasts, they say that like when they're going to say something controversial. But I did this analysis that I cannot show for a particular client, and it was kind of an advanced analysis, but I will try to summarize it. After I started looking at leads as a function of multiple different things, I ended up seeing that leads for that client was tracking really nicely to number of top page rankings, not traffic. It like looked like a more obvious dependency graph when I looked at it as a number of rankings. I cannot promise to anyone listening that will always hold true. I have not done that analysis for all of our clients. All I'm saying is that was interesting, and I can qualitatively explain it and say the keywords we pick and our whole content strategy based on conversion intent are keywords with high buying intent. And as we have said many times throughout the years, even lower traffic or volume keywords, we pick them if we think the conversion intent is high. So that could explain how the number of leads tracks to your position. That even if you're ranking in a high position for a high buying intent keyword, that's going to generate leads for you, even if the traffic is low, because probably the only reason we went after a lower traffic keyword is because the conversion rate is likely to be higher, and that could have balanced themselves out. So that's why I'm saying, like, for me, I think if you are doing this with a lot of other stakeholders that you need to sort of like keep happy, whether that be as an internal employee or external, keep everyone focused on the end result. I think don't obsess over traffic is at least how I approach it, is keep them focused on this keyword is valuable. We are now at 8. That's a big deal. It's got a couple conversions. Wait till we're at 2. Wait till we're at 1. And I think that's really important.
The last thing that I wanted to cover was just how much domain rating plays into how quickly you can get results. I know that you have a graph in that article that we produced, and then I wanted to kind of show just what we see for a newer client that we were working with that started with a DR of 0.5.
Again, starting level setting with this graph, right? We have this data of whatever number of clients this is. You can count the dots, and how many blog posts are ranking on the first page. And I said, it looks like nice and monotonic, meaning it's like increasing and up and to the right when I plot it as a function of months engaged with us. What does it look like as a function of domain authority? And I plotted that down here, and there's no trend. And the people looking on YouTube can see it. Now, there are some asterisks to this graph. Obviously, the ones that have been ranking, that have been working with it for a long time, have a lot more pieces. So of course they're going to have more first page rankings. So it's not necessarily a totally fair comparison. But you would have expected to maybe see some level of trend where higher domain authority is a higher number of first page rankings. You don't see that at all. It almost looks like the inverse trend. So it's just kind of like a wash. So what I end up concluding, and you can read this article, I think what is a big deal here is people really index, I think over-index domain authority, which is really just a metric for like number of backlinks that your domain has and the strength of those backlinks. Domain authority being Ahrefs' we were using Ahrefs' as domain rating metric, which is, one of many. So, and I think people say like that's really important. It is, but Google's algorithm is not just like you can see on any SERP. It's not just sorting by domain authority. There is this more ephemeral concept that people throw around in SEO called topical authority, that a lot of people have said they've seen secondhand evidence, and we've seen that as well, and I think that can help explain this. Specifically, the keywords we're going after we call bottom of funnel. That means they're about products. So for the concussion clinic client, Cognitive FX that you showed, it would be keywords around concussion treatment, concussion clinics, or whatever. Those product-related keywords, naturally, you have higher topical authority on that because that's what your site is about. That's what your product is about. So if you sell CRM software and all links pointing so far, like, most of them are about CRM software because that's what your site is about. If you're doing some top of funnel marketing strategy where your content and your content team are trying to go after some general purpose sales topic because CRMs are for salespeople, it may take time to get topical authority. That's why a lot of content agencies and gurus, for lack of a better term, talk about this hub and spoke, and there's other terms for it as well, pillar content type methods. What they're saying in this hub and spoke technique and pillar content technique is, in order for us to rank for this topic area or this head keyword, we need to build a bunch of articles around that topic so that Google and their algorithm sees us as authoritative on that topic. They give us more topical authority. My argument is if you're doing bottom of funnel type content like our strategy, you should have a head start on topical authority because all the content on your site, your marketing site, your homepage, your features pages, whatever, your help pages even, your knowledge base are about that product category. In my CRM example, it's all about CRMs, and probably the existing people linking to you are about CRMs. If you just launched your site, you probably did some product hunt launch or like whatever. And like you launched it on some places and people are talking about you as a CRM. So going after CRM keywords should give you a head start in topical authority. So your domain authority, aka the number of backlinks to your site, should matter less than if you were going after a general purpose sales term.
I don't know if you could really call it a case study, but we're going to show some real client data here. So we've talked about this client on a number of these episodes in the last few months. Their Miroscope, I think we talked about them when we were about to produce their disruption story from them before we really had any rankings. That was the first piece that we did. But then we started going after some of these keywords, and we had mentioned that we were doing the disruption story because their site had a domain rating of 0.5, which was the lowest that I've ever seen of any site that I've ever worked on. And we
You
were,
could probably buy a brand new GoDaddy domain and it would have
and
a
it would
higher
still,
domain
yeah, it
rating.
would still have like a 1 or something like that. So they're truly just getting started with SEO. And so I think it's a good case study just to show how quickly you can drive rankings with the right process, despite having a really low domain rating. And so they started with us in February. In month 1, we only published the first piece, and that first piece was a disruption story. So really the SEO side started in March. Here we are at the end of June. It's June 28th today when we're recording. And you can see that we've already started to generate not only first page rankings, but rankings in the top 3 positions, including their own company name, which they historically were getting beaten out by a bunch of product listings. But you can see here.
No, wait. People are not going to understand that. They're going to be like, "What? Why is it hard to rank for your own product name?" Their name is Miroscope. That happens to be an existing children's toy category. So it's not like just making up, Content.ly or some. I think that's an actual business. Apologies, but like not making up some startup name. And obviously it's easy to rank for it. In this case, like this was just like an existing toy category, so it's actually not that easy to rank for it. But now we're already ranking number 1. I wanted to give that context.
Yeah. So we're March, April, May, June. So 4 months of doing SEO content now, and you can start to see we have multiple different types of posts ranking on page 1 already. So we have a couple comparison pieces already in position 1. Again, you could see the volume and say, okay, that doesn't really matter. It's not really competitive. But now we have some higher volume keywords here that we're already ranking on page 1 for. So LangChain alternatives, 400 volume, prompt versioning, 30, LangChain prompt template, 700. And so you can kind of just see, even 4 months in, again, a testament to that data that I was talking about earlier, where we often see companies start to rank on page 1, even in that first 1 to 5 month period. And I do think a lot of these rankings took hold in the last month or so. So yeah, maybe in the first 3 months, it's rare to see a bunch of first page rankings. But just wanted to show this because the site right as of now, so 4 months in, when we started from 0.5, has a DR of 10, and almost every piece that we've produced for them so far on the SEO side is on page 1. So it is possible to get rankings this quickly, and domain rating isn't always a factor that we, I guess, look at when we're trying to drive results from content marketing. I think the key thing is the strategy. I think the strategy can, again, like Davish was saying, if we were only going after top of the funnel keywords and they were highly competitive, it's probably rare that we would see these kind of results. But because we're going after these high intent keywords that most other competitors just don't even think to go after, we can start to see these really good rankings for them show up quickly.
Yeah. And then, yeah, again, like just like you said, if people are saying, oh, those are low volume, I also saw the keyword difficulty column on the right side. They had really low numbers. Yeah. Like, don't get us wrong. There's a reason why this one's ranking, right? This is like a burgeoning space, LLM apps and development. Yes, those are lower keyword difficulty things. We're not making an outlandish claim that somehow magically with our method, a domain rating of 0.5, you can rank for best car insurance in 2 months. That's ridiculous. So like, yeah, that's like a particular example. But the point remains, domain authority or domain rating is not the be all end all that a lot of people in SEO make it out to be. And there are instances, in particular, if you can find less competitive keywords that are still bottom of funnel, that are specific to your product and what it does, you can rank fast. Don't shy away from that.
Yeah, the last thing that I want to touch on now that you talked about it too is keyword difficulty. Because there's people that'll shy away from various keywords because the keyword difficulty is high. So I don't really tend to pay attention to keyword difficulty as a metric in terms of deciding whether it makes sense to go after the keyword or not. If the keyword difficulty is low, sometimes it can still take a little bit to rank for, and sometimes if the keyword difficulty is high, you can rank for it quickly. Again, it kind of just depends on the site. I don't think you should really look at the keyword difficulty as just a metric to decide whether to go after the keyword or not. I think you should produce the piece of content, put it out there, and then continue to build links to it and see how difficult it is to move up. So
yeah, we could maybe even do an entire episode on a deep dive of like
on
examples of keyword difficulty. And
because I've just seen such a spread there. I've seen keywords that are seemingly easy to go after that it takes a while to rank, or there is decent competition for them. And then I've also seen keywords that are really hard to rank for that we have been able to rank for, but it does take time. And I think the better way to think about keyword difficulty is not whether or not you should go after it. It's just you should think generally that higher keyword difficulties are going to take more time to rank. So if you're going after a really competitive category keyword term where there's a bunch of big sites, let's say like HubSpot, like, I don't know, like Contently, since you mentioned them.
I didn't mean to.
Yeah,
I was just trying to make up a random startup-y sounding name.
I know. But yeah, I do think if you're going up against sites like that, you're going after a really competitive keyword, it's going to just take more time. Like expect the rankings to take a year to rank for that keyword with a lot of links. And so, yeah, I just wanted to touch on that as well.
Yeah, I think we can explore whether we want to do another episode and just kind of dive into that. Just remember that keyword difficulty is really just a metric of these SEO softwares like Ahrefs, just saying what the relative amount of links and domain authority is for the other things ranking on page one. But that does not factor topical authority. It does not factor how well those pieces of content have like gone after that particular keyword. Those things are still in your control.
If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. You can also get the audio-only versions of these shows wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow us at growandconvert.com/newsletter for any articles and updates for when these videos come out.